The stagecoach rumbled to a halt, sending dust swirling across the barren landscape of Promise Creek, Wyoming Territory, 1875. Jenna Lockhart clutched her small valise with trembling hands as she stared through the grimy window at the man waiting beside the coach stop. 6 foot tall with broad shoulders, a weathered Stetson pulled low over his eyes, and a patient stance that belied the harshness of his surroundings, this was Samuel Landon, her future husband. Jenna's throat constricted as panic set in. She had traveled over 2,000 miles from Boston to marry a stranger, and now that the moment had arrived, words failed her completely. The other passengers had already disembarked, leaving her alone with her racing thoughts and the letter in her pocket that had changed her life. "Last stop, miss," the driver called, peering through the door. "This is Promise Creek." With a nod, she gathered her courage and stepped down from the coach. The Wyoming air was crisp and clean, so different from Boston's coal smoke haze. Samuel approached her with measured steps, his expression unreadable beneath the shadow of his hat. "Miss Lockhart?" he asked, his voice deep but gentle, like distant thunder on a clear day. Jenna nodded, her eyes downcast. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound emerged. Months of correspondence had led to this moment, yet now she found herself mute with anxiety. Her fingers twisted nervously in the fabric of her traveling dress. Samuel studied her for a long moment, taking in her auburn hair tucked neatly beneath a modest bonnet, her slender frame, and her obvious distress. Instead of pressing her to speak, he smiled softly, and gestured toward her single piece of luggage. "May I?" he asked. She nodded again, still unable to form words. "You must be tired from your journey," he continued, lifting her valise with ease. "I've got the wagon just over there. It's about an hour's ride to the ranch." Jenna followed him to a sturdy wagon with 2 patient horses in harness. When he offered his hand to help her climb aboard, she hesitated only briefly before accepting his assistance. His hand was callous but warm, his grip secure without being forceful. As they settled into the wagon seat, the silence between them grew heavy. Jenna felt tears welling in her eyes. This wasn't how she had imagined their first meeting. In her dreams, she had been charming and articulate, not frozen in fear. Samuel cleared his throat. "Miss Lockhart, Jenna, I want you to know something." He turned to look at her directly, his blue eyes finally visible beneath his hat brim. "You don't need to say a word. You've said enough by showing up." The simple statement broke through her paralysis. A single tear escaped down her cheek. "There's plenty of time for talking later," he continued, his voice a comforting rumble as he urged the horses forward. "Right now, let's just get you home." Home. The word echoed in Jenna's mind as the wagon rolled away from Promise Creek. She had left everything familiar behind, her position as a schoolteacher's assistant, the orphanage where she'd grown up, the few friends she'd made, all to marry a man whose face she'd never seen until today. As they traveled, Samuel pointed out landmarks with quiet commentary. "That's Widow Jensen's place. Best apple pies in the territory." And later, "Over there's where Sweetwater Creek runs. Good fishing in the spring." Jenna absorbed it all in silence, grateful for his patience. Gradually, the tension in her shoulders eased. When they crested a hill and the Landon ranch came into view, she couldn't suppress a small gasp. The homestead was nestled in a gentle valley, sheltered by cottonwoods. A sturdy 2-story house stood proudly among several outbuildings, with corrals and pastures stretching beyond. Cattle grazed in the distance, and smoke curled from the chimney. "It's not much compared to Eastern standards," Samuel said, a hint of pride in his voice. "But it's solid. Been working on it for 7 years now." As they approached, a gangly teenage boy ran out to meet them. "Mr. Sam! You're back earlier than we expected." "This is Danny," Samuel explained to Jenna. "He helps around the ranch." "Danny, this is Miss Lockhart." "Madam," the boy said, tipping his hat respectfully. "We got everything ready like Mr. Sam asked?" Jenna managed a smile and a nod, which seemed to satisfy the boy. "Take care of the horses, will you?" Samuel asked, helping Jenna down from the wagon. I'll show Miss Lockhart the house. The house was surprisingly welcoming inside. Simple furniture arranged for comfort rather than show, clean floors, curtains at the windows, and a few books on a shelf near the fireplace. Mrs. Hendricks from town came by yesterday to help get things in order, Samuel explained. I hope it's comfortable enough. Jenna nodded, running her fingers over the back of a wooden rocking chair. Your room is upstairs, he continued. First door on the right. I've taken the room at the end of the hall until after the wedding. If you still want that. The uncertainty in his voice gave Jenna pause. She looked up at him, truly studying his face for the first time. He was handsome in a rugged way, with lines around his eyes that spoke of squinting into the sun and a strong jaw shadowed with stubble. But it was the kindness in his expression that caught her attention. Finding her voice at last, she whispered, Thank you. Samuel's eyes widened slightly at the sound, then crinkled with his smile. You're welcome, Miss Lockhart. Take all the time you need to settle in. Supper will be ready in about an hour. Left alone, Jenna climbed the stairs to her room. It was small but pleasant, with a brass bed covered in a colorful quilt, a washstand with a porcelain basin, and a chest of drawers. A window overlooked the ranch yard and the rolling prairie beyond. She unpacked her few belongings, changed into a fresh dress, and attempted to calm her racing thoughts. Samuel Landon seemed decent, and his home was far more comfortable than she had dared hope. Yet the enormity of what she had done agreeing to marry a stranger in a land she didn't know threatened to overwhelm her. At supper, Samuel kept the conversation light, not pressuring her to speak but leaving openings if she chose to. Danny filled the silence with cheerful chatter about ranch happenings, while the housekeeper, Mrs. Reed, a widow from a neighboring homestead who came by to cook the main meal each day, watched Jenna with kind curiosity. The wedding's set for Saturday, Mrs. Reed mentioned as she served apple cobbler. Whole town's talking about it. Jenna's spoon clattered against her plate. Only if Miss Lockhart is ready, Samuel interjected firmly. There's no rush. But there was a rush, Jenna knew. Her teaching position was gone, her meager savings spent on the journey west. She had no home to return to if this arrangement failed. Still, Samuel's consideration touched her. That night, lying in an unfamiliar bed, Jenna finally let her tears flow freely. She cried for the girl she had been, for the woman she was becoming, and for the uncertainty of it all. Eventually, exhausted, she drifted to sleep with the sound of coyotes calling in the distance. Morning brought determination. Jenna rose early, washed her face, and braided her hair. When she descended the stairs, she found Samuel at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee. Good morning, he said, rising politely. Did you sleep well? Jenna took a deep breath. Yes, she managed, her voice barely audible. Thank you. Samuel's smile was like sunrise breaking over the prairie. You're welcome. Coffee? The day unfolded with a gentle rhythm. Samuel showed her around the ranch, introducing her to the workings of her new home. Two ranch hands tipped their hats respectfully, clearly curious but too polite to stare. A milk cow named Bess regarded her with liquid brown eyes, and chickens scattered at her approach to the coop. By midday, Jenna had spoken perhaps a dozen words, each one an effort. Yet Samuel's patience never wavered. He seemed to understand that her silence wasn't rejection but a struggle she was fighting within herself. I need to check the north pasture this afternoon, he told her after lunch. Would you like to come along? It's a nice ride, and I could show you more of the ranch. Jenna hesitated, then nodded. She had ridden occasionally in Boston's public gardens but never across open country. Samuel helped her mount a gentle mare named Daisy, adjusting the stirrups to fit her shorter legs. Just hold the reins loosely and let her follow my horse, he instructed. She knows the way. The afternoon ride changed something fundamental between them. As they traversed the rolling grasslands, Samuel pointed out wildflowers, bird nests, and distant landmarks. He told her stories of his arrival in Wyoming territory after the war, how he'd built the ranch from nothing, and his hopes for its future. Listening was easier than speaking, and Jenna found herself relaxing in his company. When they stopped by a creek to let the horses drink, she gathered her courage. "My parents died when I was 7, she said softly, staring at the rippling water. "Fever. I grew up in the Brookline Orphan Asylum." Samuel remained still, as if afraid any movement might silence her again. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I learned to be quiet there. To not draw attention." She plucked a stem of grass, twirling it between her fingers. "It became a habit. A hard habit to break," he observed. She nodded. "I worked as an assistant at the orphanage school after I grew up, teaching the little ones to read." A faint smile touched her lips. "I loved that part. We have a school in Promise Creek," Samuel mentioned. "Small, but growing. They're always looking for folks who can help." The idea warmed her. "I'd like that. Someday." Their return to the ranch was marked by a new ease between them. Jenna still spoke little, but the silence no longer felt like a barrier. The days leading up to Saturday fell into a pattern. Mornings were spent learning the routines of the ranch house, afternoons exploring the property, or visiting neighbors. Each day, Jenna spoke a little more, though conversations remained brief and halting. On Friday evening, Samuel found her on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "Tomorrow's the day," he said, leaning against the railing beside her. "If you're sure." Jenna turned to study his profile. In just a week, his face had become familiar, comforting. "I'm sure," she said, her voice stronger than it had been since her arrival. Samuel nodded, relief evident in the set of his shoulders. "The ceremony's at noon. Nothing fancy, just the preacher and whoever from town wants to witness." "That's fine." She hesitated. "Samuel?" "Yes?" "Thank you. For not rushing me. For understanding." He smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. "You're worth waiting for, Jenna Lockhart." The wedding day dawned clear and bright. Mrs. Reed arrived early to help Jenna prepare, bringing with her a crown of wildflowers. "Every bride should have something special," she declared, placing it on Jenna's freshly washed hair. Jenna wore her best dress, a blue cotton with delicate white embroidery at the collar and cuffs. It wasn't a wedding gown by Eastern standards, but it was clean and becoming. The wagon ride to town was quiet, nerves replacing the comfort they had begun to find in each other's company. Samuel had shaved carefully and donned a suit coat that strained slightly across his broad shoulders, evidence of its infrequent use. Promise Creek's small white church was filled with curious townsfolk when they arrived. Faces turned to examine the mail-order bride who had caused such a stir of gossip. Jenna felt her throat constricting again, the familiar panic rising. Samuel must have sensed her distress. He leaned close as they paused at the church door. "Remember, you've already said everything that matters by being here." The simple reminder steadied her. She took his offered arm and walked down the short aisle to where Preacher Wilson waited. The ceremony was brief. When prompted for her vows, Jenna spoke clearly enough to be heard by those nearest, though her voice trembled. The gold band Samuel placed on her finger had belonged to his mother, he had told her earlier. It felt heavy but right. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher declared. "You may kiss your bride." Samuel bent down, hesitating just a moment before brushing his lips gently against hers. It was a chaste kiss, but Jenna felt her cheeks warm at this public display. The reception at the town hall afterward was a boisterous affair, with plenty of food contributed by neighboring families and music provided by a local fiddler. Jenna met so many people that their names and faces blurred together, but she managed polite nods and brief thanks for their congratulations. "You're doing fine," Samuel murmured during a rare quiet moment. "They're just curious. It'll die down soon enough." As the celebration continued, Jenna found herself seated beside the schoolteacher, Miss Peterson, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s. "Samuel tells me you have experience teaching," Miss Peterson said without preamble. Jenna nodded. At an orphanage school in Boston. We could use help with the younger children. I have 28 students now, ages 6 to 16. She tapped her fingers decisively on the table. Think about it. Term starts again in 3 weeks. The offer was unexpected but welcome, giving Jenna something to look forward to beyond the immediate adjustment to married life. As afternoon faded to evening, Samuel approached, offering his hand. Ready to head home, Mrs. Landon? The new name startled her. Mrs. Landon. She was someone's wife now. Yet, as she placed her hand in Samuel's, the title felt less like a stranger's and more like a new aspect of herself waiting to be discovered. The ride home was quiet but comfortable. Jenna leaned slightly against Samuel's solid presence, tired from the day's events and the constant effort of interacting with so many new people. At the ranch, Samuel helped her down from the wagon, but instead of heading for the house, he held onto her hand. I have something to show you, he said. Curious, Jenna followed as he led her around to the back of the house where a small garden had been started. In the center stood a newly constructed wooden bench beneath a young apple tree. I made it last week, he explained, a hint of shyness in his normally confident manner. Thought you might like a place to sit and read. The tree will give shade eventually. The thoughtfulness of the gesture brought tears to Jenna's eyes. This man, who had married a stranger who barely spoke to him, had created something just for her comfort. It's perfect, she whispered, squeezing his hand. The first weeks of marriage were an adjustment for both of them. Samuel moved his belongings to the master bedroom, but made it clear he expected nothing more than Jenna was ready to give. They shared the bed chastely at first, with Samuel careful to maintain a respectful distance. Jenna's words came more easily each day, though she still preferred listening to talking. She learned the rhythms of ranch life, how to manage the household accounts, and the names and stories of everyone who worked for or with her husband. When school began, she started helping at the schoolhouse 3 mornings a week. Working with the youngest students brought her a joy and confidence that began to spread to other aspects of her life. One evening in late September, Jenna sat on her garden bench watching the sunset when Samuel found her. He settled beside her, their shoulders touching comfortably. Letter came from Boston today, he said, handing her an envelope. Addressed to you. It was from Martha, the cook at the orphanage, the only person there who had truly been a friend to Jenna. With fingers that trembled slightly, Jenna opened it and read silently. Good news? Samuel asked when she finished. Martha's getting married. To the grocer who delivers to the orphanage. Jenna smiled. She was worried about me, but I wrote to her last month. Told her I was happy here. Are you? Samuel's voice was carefully neutral. Jenna considered the question honestly. Yes, she realized. I am. The simple admission seemed to release something in both of them. Samuel's arm slipped around her waist, drawing her closer. I want you to know, he said, his voice low, that I never expected to find someone like you. When I wrote that advertisement, I was just hoping for a hardworking woman who might grow to be a companion someday. But you're so much more, Jenna. Her heart quickened at his words. I was so afraid, she admitted, that you'd be disappointed in me because I couldn't speak easily. That you'd regret sending for me. Never. His free hand gently turned her face toward his. Every word you say is precious because I know what it costs you. But even your silence speaks to me now. When he kissed her this time, it wasn't the brief touch of their wedding day. This kiss held warmth, promise, and a question. Jenna answered by leaning into him, her hands finding the solid breadth of his shoulders. That night, their marriage truly began. Samuel was as gentle and patient in lovemaking as he had been with her silence, guiding her through unfamiliar territory with tenderness and care. Afterwards, Jenna lay in his arms, marveling at the journey that had brought her here. Samuel? She whispered in the darkness. I think I love you. His arms tightened around her. I know I love you, Jenna Landon. Autumn gave way to winter, bringing howling blizzards that isolated the ranch for days at a time. But the Landon home remained warm, both in temperature and in spirit. Jenna found her voice more fully during those confined days, sharing stories of her childhood and dreams for their future. Samuel taught her to play checkers and to read the weather from the way smoke rose from the chimney. She taught him to appreciate poetry and to dance in their small parlor to music only they could hear. When spring arrived, it brought with it unexpected news. "I'm going to have a baby," Jenna told Samuel one morning as they shared coffee on the porch, watching dawn break over the prairie. His coffee cup clattered to the floor. "A baby? You're sure?" She nodded, suddenly uncertain of his reaction. "In late October, I think." Samuel's face transformed with a joy so powerful it took her breath away. He lifted her from her chair and spun her around, laughing. "A baby," he repeated. "Our baby." The pregnancy changed Jenna in ways she hadn't expected. As her body grew to accommodate new life, her confidence blossomed as well. Teaching at the school became a true passion, and she found herself speaking up at town meetings, advocating for books and supplies for the children. Samuel watched her transformation with pride and a deepening love. "You're not the same woman who stepped off that stagecoach," he observed one evening as they sat by the fire, Jenna's hands busy with knitting for the baby. "Does that disappoint you?" she asked, looking up from her work. "Just the opposite." He smiled. "I love that woman for her courage in coming here. I love this woman for all she's become since." "It was you who made it possible," Jenna said softly. "Your patience. Your kindness." Samuel shook his head. "It was always in you, Jenna. You just needed the right soil to grow in." On a crisp October morning, after 14 hours of labor with Mrs. Reed and the town's midwife in attendance, Jenna gave birth to a daughter. Small but strong-lunged, with a dusting of dark hair and her father's blue eyes, Sarah Elizabeth Landon announced her arrival with a cry that echoed through the ranch house. Samuel, who had paced the downstairs all night, nearly broke the door in his haste to reach them when finally invited up. The sight of his exhausted wife cradling their tiny daughter reduced the strong rancher to tears. "She's perfect," he whispered, gently touching the baby's cheek. "Like her mother." Jenna smiled tiredly. "Take her," she said. "Hold your daughter." With reverent care, Samuel gathered the swaddled infant in his arms. "Hello, little one," he murmured. "I'm your pa." The years that followed brought changes to the Landon ranch. A second bedroom was added to accommodate their growing family when twin boys, James and Thomas, joined their sister 2 years later. The apple tree in Jenna's garden grew tall enough to provide the promised shade. The bench beneath it became a favorite spot for family stories on summer evenings. Jenna's role at the school expanded to full-time teaching when Miss Peterson retired. Samuel's cattle operation prospered, allowing them to help neighbors during hard times and to contribute substantially to building a proper schoolhouse for Promise Creek's children. Sometimes, visitors to the ranch were surprised to find Jenna Landon so articulate and confident. "Hard to believe she's the same woman who couldn't speak when she first arrived," they'd whisper. But Samuel knew better. The strength had always been there, waiting for the right moment to emerge. On their 10th anniversary, Samuel presented Jenna with a leather-bound journal. Inside, he had written a single line on the first page. "You've said enough by showing up." Jenna traced the words, remembering that dusty day at the stagecoach stop. "You saved me with those words," she told him. "You gave me time to find my voice." "And what a voice it turned out to be," he replied with a grin, pulling her close. "Mrs. Reed told me yesterday that you've been organizing the women to petition for voting rights." Jenna laughed. "Wyoming's already a state now. Women here can vote. I just think the rest of the country should follow our example. My shy mail-order bride, changing the world." Samuel shook his head in mock amazement. "Who would have thought?" "I'm not changing the world," she corrected him. "Just our small corner of it." That night, with their children sleeping peacefully down the hall, Jenna and Samuel stood on the porch of the home they had built together, watching stars appear in the vast Wyoming sky. His arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder, they didn't need words to express the depth of what had grown between them. Sometimes, Jenna reflected, love speaks most clearly in the spaces between words. In the patient waiting, the gentle guidance, the faith that what seems broken might simply be gathering strength. Samuel had given her that gift from the very beginning, and she had built a life on its foundation. "I love you, Samuel Landon," she said into the comfortable silence. "I know," he replied, kissing the top of her head. "You said so the moment you stepped off that stagecoach."